Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 37 based on novel. So let's start. The young lady sat on a green stone, while her icy blue long hair scattered across her body. Indistinctly, there seemed to be a frosty twinkle and chill that quietly permeated the air. The chill was not thick, however. It was an icy cold sensation that could pierce into the depths of one's bones. Her appearance seemed capable of causing one's soul to thoroughly freeze up. "What is going on?" asked Lin Dong with a shocked expression. It was obvious that he did not understand the mysterious changes that occurred to Ying Huan Huan during her training. "This girl is not so simple," replied little Martin with a grave expression as he slowly turned around. Lin Dong gently nodded his head. The situation before him was indeed something that would not occur to any random ordinary person. As Lin Dong and the other two observed, a somewhat pained expression appeared on Ying Huan Huan's beautiful face. In the next moment, ring after ring of icy blue halos unexpectedly started to slowly rise from her body. Crack snap! The icy blue halo started to dissipate, causing the ground to seemingly turn frost-locked instantaneously. After a few breaths, the entire mountain peak had transformed into a blue iceberg. As those few icy blue halos started to spread out, Lin Dong and the other two suddenly saw Ying Huan Huan's icy blue hair grow longer. As a chillingly frosty gale blew past, her icy blue long hair flew in the air. Coupled with the snowflakes dancing in the air, she looked just like an ice queen amidst the snow. The scene before them was majestic and alluring. As the halos started to fluctuate, the pained expression on Ying Huan Huan's face turned richer. In the next moment, her tightly shut eyes suddenly sprung open. The instant she opened her eyes, her originally black pupils were now permeated with an icy blue color. Even her pupils had turned icy clear, and there was not a single trace of emotion within them. Her gaze was akin to that of a god looking down on mortals, no joy, no sadness, no benevolence, and no evil. A serious expression appeared on Lin Dong's face when he saw the state that Ying Huan Huan was in. Her current gaze had no focal point and was not focused on his body. However, he could still feel a chill enveloping his entire body. Ying Huan Huan's current condition made him feel uneasy, and he was unable to accept that this young lady, that was typically brimming with youth and vitality, would display such an icy cold expression. Although he was feeling uneasy in his heart, Lin Dong did not dare to act recklessly. After all, he did not know what exactly had happened within her body. Therefore, he was afraid that if he acted recklessly, he may end up hurting her instead. At this juncture, all they could do was to stand by quietly and observe. After Ying Huan Huan opened her eyes, icy blue luster suddenly appeared on her forehead before the glow spread outwards. After which, the glow started to form into an icy blue ancient runic symbol. Reincarnation symbol? Upon seeing the icy blue ancient runic symbol, little Martin's body instantly shivered. Promptly, an astonished expression instantly appeared on his face as he involuntarily exclaimed, "Reincarnation symbol?" Lin Dong was startled for a moment before he asked. Promptly, he frowned his brows and asked, "What is that?" "I never thought that it could actually be the reincarnation symbol. This lass is indeed not simple. She is actually a reincarnator." Little Martin mumbled for a short moment before aspirating. Looking towards Lin Dong, he replied in a deep voice, "Do you know about the reincarnation stage?" Upon hearing that term, Lin Dong's gaze instantly hardened before he faintly nodded his head and said, "After life and death, it would be reincarnation. As for reincarnation, immortal. In this world, there isn't anyone who is truly immortal. Even if one steps in reincarnation stage, they still face dangers that may be beyond the imagination of an ordinary individual. For the nirvana stage, there exists the nirvana tribulation. As for the reincarnation stage, there is also the reincarnation tribulation. If one crosses it, one would evolve and would be free and unfettered from the world. However, if one failed, one would disappear by reincarnation," said little Martin casually. "Reincarnation tribulation," muttered Lin Dong as he pursed his lips. This was obviously the first time he had heard about this. However, that stage was still too far and out of his reach. What does this have to do with her? Also, What is a reincarnator? People who are able to step into the reincarnation stage are probably the existences that are standing on the apex of this world, since they have control over life and death. From another perspective, even time cannot erase them. Qingji, whom we met in the Green Dragon Palace, is most likely an expert that has stepped into reincarnation stage. If not, he could not have survived until now. In the ancient times, if those elites at reincarnation stage were to fail their reincarnation tribulation, a few of them were able to preserve a little of their consciousness with their remarkable strength. They will let their remnant consciousness enter the reincarnation cycle and wait for a chance to reactivate their consciousness and cross the nirvana back into this world again. Thereafter, those individuals who were reborn are called reincarnators. It seems like this lass should be one of them, said little Martin as he stared at the young lady floating in mid-air with a weird gaze. You mean to say that, in her past life, she is an elite at the reincarnation stage? Asked Lin Dong as he massaged his temples. The so-called reincarnation and this sort of mysterious stuff was undoubtedly too unreal and far-fetched to him. Yes. Little Martin nodded his head and replied, perhaps, she does not even know about it. This time around, she must have stirred the remnant consciousness in the depths of her soul when she was agglomerating her Yuan spirit. Therefore, this incident occurred. Of course, this does not mean that all of the reincarnators would be able to awaken. A large majority of reincarnators would simply lead an ordinary life. As they continue along the cycle over and over again, the sliver of consciousness would gradually be worn down till it thoroughly dissipated. At that time, the super elite at reincarnation stage would have completely vanished from this world, So, would this affect her personality? In other words, would she no longer be Ying Huan Huan and become the super expert that once ruled the heavens and the earth? Asked Lin Dong after hesitating for a while. If she awakened, there would be a few changes. However, in the end the one that would remain in control would be the person in this reincarnation cycle, replied little Martin with a smile after he sensed Lin Dong's worry. Lin Dong gave a bitter laugh and could only nod his head while secretly sighing in his heart. From his point of view, he would rather Ying Huan Huan remain as the pure and innocent young lady that he had known, and not become some super elite that had reincarnated from the ancient times. Don't worry. Perhaps she might be a reincarnator, however, who knows if she can awaken her other side. As long as she doesn't awaken, she would definitely still be the Ying Huan Huan that you know, said little Martin. Okay. Lin Dong nodded his head once again before suddenly looking at little Martin and asking, did you reach the reincarnation stage in the past? Upon hearing that question, little Martin's handsome face twitched before he gave a dry laugh and replied, I missed it by just a bit. If I had already reached the reincarnation stage, I wouldn't need to hide in the stone talisman. And you wouldn't have met me. Upon hearing that, Lin Dong gave a smile. He had no intention of mocking him. Their meeting back then had undoubtedly changed their course of lives. If there was no Lin Dong, little Martin might have already scattered and died. If not for little Martin, it would also be difficult for Lin Dong to reach the current stage that he was at now. A person and a Martin had walked together for all these years and experienced numerous difficult trials together. In the end, they had endured all of those. She should not remain much longer in this current state, said little Martin as he raised his head and looked at the young lady in midair. Little Martin's prediction was spot on. After a few minutes, the icy blue color that pervaded the sky started to grow weaker rapidly. After which, Ying Huan Huan's icy cold eyes started to slowly shut once again. One by one, the layers of icy blue halos all re-entered the Ying Huan Huan's body before her extremely long icy blue hair rapidly shortened. As it was shortening, the icy blue color receded and her original black hair rapidly reappeared. After Ying Huan Huan's hair completely recovered its original color, her body started to descend from the sky. Seeing this, Lin Dong took a step forward and hugged her by the waist. The soft waist that entered his hand caused him to shake slightly, before he lowered his head only to see that he was being stared straight by a young lady's jet black eyes. The two of them continued to stare at each other and Lin Dong's expression did not change at all. It was as if this ambiguous position had nothing to do with him. As for the young lady, after seeing the opposite party's action, she finally resigned as a red embarrassed flush appeared on her fair and beautiful face. Looking at the embarrassed and resentful gaze from that young lady, Lin Dong breathed a quiet sigh of relief in his heart. That's good, this was the Ying Huan Huan that he knew. Lin Dong finally coughed dryly as the young lady became increasingly embarrassed. After which, he placed the young lady in his embrace down as though nothing had occurred. Hey? Why has this place become like this? Ying Huan Huan's face was red as she tidied her clothes. Immediately, her large eyes looked towards the icy blue-colored frost that covered the mountain. She was involuntarily stunned before she asked in shock. Lin Dong, Little Martin and Little Flame exchanged looks. It seems like Ying Huan Huan herself did not possess any recollection of the previous scene. It is due to the formation. Lin Dong smiled and randomly explained. He did not tell Ying Huan Huan about the event that had occurred earlier. From the way he saw it, it was best to go with the flow and there was no need to tell her about it. What happens in the future would depend on her fate. Ying Huan Huan nodded and she did not dwell on this matter. She lifted her pretty face and there was a joy that could not be hidden on it. My Yuan spirit has also been successfully formed. Lin Dong grinned. He was not surprised about this fact. Since Ying Huan Huan was at 8 Yuan Nirvana stage, her body was already able to produce Yuan spirit force. Hence, it would be much easier for her to form a Yuan spirit as compared to Lin Dong. From Ying Huan Huan's current aura, she had reached the peak of 8 Yuan Nirvana stage despite having yet to break through to 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. Perhaps she would soon possess the qualification to attempt to do so. This was a piece of good news since the Great Sect competition was about to arrive. What do you plan to do next? Standing beside him, Little Martin walked over. He glanced at the two of them before asking. I will need to return to Dao Sect. The Great Sect competition is around the corner. Lin Dong mused for a moment before replying. Great Sect competition, that is a grand event even within the entire Eastern Xian region. Every reputable sect and faction in Eastern Xian region would send their best disciples to participate. Its danger and intensity surpasses the 100 Empire War. Little Martin involuntarily smiled and said when he heard this. Based on what I know, the previous Great Sect competitions were all held in the unique Devil region, right? TSK, that is an extremely perilous region. Unique Devil region? Lin Dong was startled. He frowned slightly. What is present there that makes it so dangerous? It was one of the battlefields during the ancient Heaven and Earth War. Little Martin lifted the corner of his mouth and replied. Do not ask me about the ancient Heaven and Earth War. That occurred a long time ago and even I do not know about it. The only thing that I am aware of is that all the experts in the land basically gathered together in order to fight that great war. Lin Dong's heart was suddenly shaken. He recalled the ancient flashbacks that he saw in the Great Ancient Tablet. He wondered if those events were linked. After the Great War ended, that area was eroded by demonic chi and it led to some extremely frightening monsters. It can be considered as one of the most perilous areas within Eastern Xian region. Quite a number of people would die there during each Great Sect competition. Of course, although that place is dangerous, it is also a land of treasure. Countless experts died during that ancient war. If one is lucky, one might be able to obtain a great inheritance from within that place and take a huge leap forward. Lin Dong nodded slightly upon hearing Little Martin's words. This allure was sufficient to cause one to go all out for it. Are the both of you returning to Dao Sect together with me? Lin Dong looked at Little Martin and Little Flame before asking. We will not be going. I am going to bring this fellow to another place and see if I can help him to break through to 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. If he really makes a breakthrough, I will bring him to directly to look for you in the unique Devil region. Little Martin mused for a moment before replying. All right. Lin Dong nodded. It was clearly more beneficial for Little Flame to follow Little Martin. Heading back to Dao Sect now would not be beneficial for his training progress. After all, no matter how one puts it, both of them were still demonic beasts. With Little Martin's guidance, Little Flame's training would be accelerated. In that case, let's part ways here. We will go and find you once we have settled everything. Little Martin smiled. After which, he waved his hand in a somewhat free and easy manner. He did not show any signs of dragging his feet as his body moved and leapt into midair. Big brother, we will head to the unique devil region to look for you when the time comes. Little Flame also smiled in a silly manner at Lin Dong. After which, he leapt into midair and exchanged glances with little Martin. They did not hesitate as they transformed into two rays of light and rushed towards the horizon with lightning-like speed. We should also get going. Lin Dong looked at the little Martin duo, who were far away. He exhaled gently as he suppressed the melancholy that he felt in his heart. After which, he turned his head, looked at Ying Huan Huan and said, I will walk on my own for the journey back. Ying Huan Huan nodded her head and grinned at Lin Dong. After which, her delicate body turned into a ray of light and hurried out. From the looks of it, this shy lady was unable to stand being carried by Lin Dong. Lin Dong stared at that light figure with a silly smile on his face. However, the smile on his face promptly diminished a little. This was because he could sense an extremely faint icy cold aura present within that ray of light. That icy cold aura was exactly the same as the one emitted by Ying Huan Huan when she was in that state previously. It seems like that incident had impacted her a little. However, he did not know if it was beneficial or harmful. Lin Dong sighed softly in his heart before he pursed his lips. After which, his body moved, transforming into a light figure that swiftly chased the light ray in front. The time taken to return to Dao Sect was undoubtedly dragged to be about twice the time taken when they left. After all, Ying Huan Huan had the character of a young lady. She had played and enjoyed herself extensively during this trip. Lin Dong also became a lot more relaxed after having settled this matter. Additionally, Ying Huan Huan had done him a huge favor. Therefore, he followed Ying Huan Huan to have some fun. As such, it took them nearly half a month's time before they finally arrived at Dao Sect. We have finally arrived. After walking through the enormous light barrier, Ying Huan Huan's pretty face immediately revealed a sweet smile when she saw the familiar scene around her. She inhaled a deep breath of air before laughingly said. Lin Dong looked at her helplessly. This girl really played to her heart's content during the journey back. You should return to Sky Hall first. I will also have to return to Desolate Hall to let Marshal Uncle Chenshin and the rest know that I am still alive. Lin Dong's voice had just sounded out when he suddenly lifted his head. He looked at a spot a short distance away. There was a rushing wind sound being emitted from the mid-air. After which, over a dozen figures appeared in their sight. This is bad. It's the enforcement unit of the sect. They aren't here to catch us, they. Ying Huan Huan's eyes looked over. Immediately, the expression on her tiny face changed a little as she hurriedly asked. Lin Dong knitted his brows slightly. He looked at the enforcement unit hurrying over, but he did not feel any ill intent from them. Junior brother Lin Dong, little junior sister Ying Huan Huan, the sect master has instructed the both of you to meet him immediately. The one who spoke was the leader of this enforcement unit. He was a man around 30 years old. His expression was cold and stern, but there wasn't a stern glint in his eyes when he looked at Lin Dong and Ying Huan Huan. Instead, a smile flashed across his eyes when he saw Ying Huan Huan attempting to evade his eyes. Thank you, senior. Lin Dong quietly sighed in relief. After which, he cupped his hands together and bowed at the enforcement until he pulled Ying Huan Huan and quickly hurried to the deep part of Dao Sect. That's right, little junior sister Huan Huan, Marshal Uncle Chi Lei has also asked you to return that heavenly phoenix thither immediately. Ying Huan Huan suddenly heard a teasing voice being transmitted from behind when the two of them were some distance away. Her small face quickly turned bitter. It's over. It's over. This time around, I will definitely be grounded. Lin Dong shrugged his shoulders when he heard Ying Huan Huan continuously muttering to herself. However, he did not tease her. Instead, he held her and rushed to the deep part of the sect. Finally, they descended on a serene mountain with a bamboo house on it. After they descended, they immediately saw Ying Xuanzi standing with his hands behind him in front of his bamboo house. Even Lin Dong's heart pounded heavily at this moment. He released Ying Huan Huan and the two of them quietly landed. Ying Huan Huan had withdrawn all her liveliness at this moment as she landed obediently. Her eyes did not even dare to randomly roam around. Her manner was completely different from her usually vibrant self. The moment Lin Dong and Ying Huan Huan landed, that white-clothed Ying Xuanzi also slowly turned around. He was just about to speak when Lin Dong saw his eyes suddenly pausing on Ying Huan Huan. At that moment, Lin Dong could detect Ying Xuanzi's pupils shrinking a little. Did he sense it? Lin Dong pursed his lips when he saw this scene. The change in Ying Xuanzi's expression was extremely slight and only Lin Dong, who had been carefully observing him, was able to detect it. However, the former's expression quickly recovered. The two of you are really good at wreaking havoc. Not only did you steal the Heavenly Phoenix Scyther, but you guys even killed an elder and 2 soul generals. You really know how to create trouble. Ying Xuanzi glanced at the two of them and said. Lin Dong laughed bitterly. Judging from his words, he was now certain that the one who secretly intervened was indeed Ying Xuanzi. Father, those fellows from Yuan Gate came looking for trouble. If we did not retaliate, it is likely that we would be the ones who failed to return instead, Ying Huan Huan muttered. Fortunately, Ren Yuanzi did not discover your identity this time around. Otherwise, the Yuan Gate will not take this lying down. After all, the great sect competition has yet to begin. Ying Xuanzi glared at Ying Huan Huan before speaking. Ren Yuanzi, Lin Dong's eyes hardened. It seemed like that was the Yuan Gate sect chief who came chasing after them. However, since this matter was not discovered, I will let it go. Those people from Yuan Gate, as long as it is not done openly, it doesn't matter if you kill them. Ying Xuanzi's voice paused for a moment before speaking in a faint manner. Lin Dong and Ying Huan Huan clearly sighed in relief when they heard his words. Huan Huan, you should go back and return the Heavenly Phoenix Scyther to Marshal Uncle Chi Lei. Although that item belongs to you, it should still be placed in Sky Hall until your strength reaches a certain level. Ying Xuanzi spoke to Ying Huan Huan. Oh. Ying Huan Huan nodded obediently. Her large eyes rotated over Lin Dong. After which, she used a voice that only the both of them could hear and said, I am leaving. You should pray for yourself. After speaking, the young lady directly transformed into a ray of light and left this mountain as though she was fleeing. This caused Lin Dong to feel neither able to laugh nor cry. This lass. Ying Xuanzi looked at the light that disappeared into the distance before he laughed involuntarily. His jade-like face contained a pampering and loving expression that could not be hidden. His sight was gradually withdrawn. That smile on his face also slowly disappeared when he looked at Lin Dong. After remaining silent for a moment, he suddenly asked, You are aware of what happened to Huan Huan, right? Is Sect Master also aware of it? Lin Dong probingly asked. I have already sensed it since she was young. However, it is unexpected that she will interact with the spirit when she was forming her Yuan spirit. Ying Xuanzi sighed. His expression was somewhat complicated. That lass is actually a reincarnator. It is just that I do not know which ultimate expert from the ancient times she was in her former life. Lin Dong was quiet and his eyes were a little worried. He was worried that Ying Xuanzi would feel a blotch in his heart because Ying Huan Huan was a reincarnator. You should not have wild thoughts. Regardless of what Ying Huan Huan turns into, she will forever be my daughter. Even if she truly awakens, the one from this lifetime will still be the one in charge. Ying Xuanzi spoke smilingly as if he was aware of Lin Dong's thoughts. Although Huan Huan is a reincarnator, it might be a good matter from the perspective of the sect. However, from the angle of a father, I only want her to be an ordinary girl. That way, I will have the ability to protect her. She can also act as she pleases and would not need to shoulder any burdens. I can also support her and protect her. Lin Dong's heart trembled slightly. He looked at the smile on Ying Xuanzi's face and his heart felt a tinge of regret. He should not have doubted a father's thoughts. Ying Xuanzi smiled and waved his hand when he saw the apologetic expression on Lin Dong's face. After which, he patted the latter's shoulder and said, Additionally, you have done this matter in a very beautiful fashion. It really relieves one's anger. You should have seen the furious expression on Ren Yuanzi's face back then. This matter only occurred because they chose to intervene. We were only after the Earth Core spiritual brewing saliva. Moreover, they were the ones who attacked us first. It was pointless for us to give in at that time. In that case, we can only finish them off. Lin Dong shrugged his shoulders and laughed. That celestial demon Martin friend of yours is very powerful. Currently, it seems like he has yet to recover his full strength. It seems like he should be quite an extraordinary individual even in the celestial demon Martin tribe. You really have a wide network of friends. The celestial demon Martin and heavenly devil Tiger. They are both the strongest tribes within the demonic beast world. Ying Xuanzi laughed with a deeper meaning. Sect Master will not discriminate them based on their identities, right? Lin Dong spread his hands and said, I heard Wu Dao mention that the reason you chose Dao Sect back then was largely because of your two friends. If I held a grudge against them, would that end up pushing you away? Such an outstanding disciple, even I am reluctant to do so, Ying Xuanzi laughed. Looking at it now, it seems like my choice back then was quite a wise one. If it is any other sect, it is likely that it will not end like this. Lin Dong parted his mouth and smiled. His obscure bootlicking caused Ying Xuanzi to laugh. There is still 1 more month's time before the great sect competition. You should quietly remain in the sect to train during this period of time. Yes. Lin Dong nodded. His strength had advanced quite greatly during this trip and he needed time to digest as well. Go. Additionally, remember not to leak the news of Huan Huan being a reincarnator. If Yuan Gate becomes aware of it, they might quietly attack Huan Huan. After all, once she awakens, she will be utterly amazing, Ying Xuanzi reminded. Yes, this disciple understands. Lin Dong nodded. After which, he saw Ying Xuanzi waving at him. He immediately bowed before turning around and rushing out of this mountain. Following Lin Dong's departure, this entire mountain once again descended into silence. Ying Xuanzi stood with his hands behind him. A long time later, he finally sighed helplessly. Weren't you already aware that Ying Huan Huan was a reincarnator? Why are you still sighing like this? The space behind Ying Xuanzi shook slightly before a blue-robed, white-haired elder appeared. The latter smilingly asked. It is just that I never expected her to make contact with that reincarnated soul so soon. Ying Xuanzi shook his head and softly said, since she has already made contact with that reincarnated soul, it is likely that the odds of awakening in the future will be quite high. Now, I can only hope that Lass will not change too dramatically. Turning a little fairy, who can't even remain idle for a moment, into an ice princess is something that even my old bones cannot stand. The blue-robed old man fondled his beard. He thought for a moment and laughed bitterly. It was a little difficult for him to imagine Ying Huan Huan's cold and indifferent expression in the future. We can only continue to observe. Hopefully, this girl will be able to suppress that reincarnated soul in the future. Otherwise, Ying Xuanzi shook his head. A somewhat worried sigh slowly spread over this mountain. After returning to Desolate Hall, Lin Dong was naturally reprimanded by Chen Shen and Wu Dao over his disappearance during this period of time. However, it was obvious that they were not seriously upset. This was because they were smiling to the point of being unable to shut their mouths when they realized that Lin Dong's strength had greatly surged after this trip. Therefore, their reprimand was completely without any impact. Lin Dong once again quieted down during the subsequent period of time. He would usually undertake a retreat or head to the martial arts hall to roam around. Chen Shen and Wu Dao naturally felt quite satisfied when they saw him fully immerse himself in training. As the days quietly passed by one at a time, the atmosphere within Dao Sect once again quietly turned tense. Many disciples acted as though they were about to face a great enemy. Those outstanding disciples from the 4 halls were all going all out to train in an attempt to improve themselves. The reason for this was naturally the Great Sect competition, which was about to arrive. During the last few Great Sect competitions, the Dao Sect was basically completely suppressed by the Yuan Gate. The last time around, the big senior sister of Sky Hall died. That person was also Wang Yang's elder sister, and it had thoroughly angered every disciple in Dao Sect. It was likely that if it wasn't because the upper echelons in Dao Sect had suppressed it, a big battle would have likely occurred between both parties. This hatred clearly would not die down. With the flow of time, this hatred also gradually settled deeply, waiting for a source of ignition. Clearly, this ignition was the upcoming Great Sect competition. This was because one would not suffer any blame no matter what methods one used at that place. Many Dao Sect's disciples were quietly waiting. They were waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Currently, that opportunity had finally arrived. Time swiftly passed one day after another amidst the tensed atmosphere within Dao Sect. If the earlier hall competition was considered lively, the current atmosphere was truly the prelude of a storm. This was because everyone knew that the Great Sect competition was no longer just a sparring session between seniors and juniors. That place was filled with danger. If one was careless, one would easily end up dead. Besides facing those ferocious monsters in the unique devil region, one would also have to be constantly on the lookout for any sneak attack by disciples from the other super sects. If one wanted to survive in that environment, not only was there a need for close cooperation within one's team, but there was also a need for them to be powerful. Otherwise, a mistake would not only get oneself killed, but might also end up implicating one's companions. In the face of that danger and pressure, the atmosphere within Dao Sect during this period of time was undoubtedly even more stifling as compared to before the hall competition. Lin Dong was seated on a cliff near the Pill River. Waves after waves of mighty natural yuan power continuously surged from around him before they finally poured into his body. There was a faint river-flowing sound being emitted from within his body. Below Lin Dong was a 10,000 feet large platform. At this moment, there were at least 10,000 Dao Sect disciples quietly seated on it. Vast and mighty yuan power flowed within the platform. Finally, threads of it were being absorbed by these disciples. If one was to discuss in terms of individual strength, these disciples might not be considered as the elite. However, with such a huge lineup, the absorption momentum was quite a sight to behold. Lin Dong observed the vast and mighty scene below before he promptly stretched his lazy waist. Ever since he returned to Dao Sect, he was generally quite relaxed. Even though he did not skimp on his usual training, as one of the senior direct disciples, Lin Dong did not need to participate in these collective training sessions. Most of his training was done on his own. After stretching his lazy waist, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly swept towards his right. He subsequently saw a familiar black-robed human figure seated on a rock a short distance away. The black heavy sword on his back caused this figure to appear exceptionally lonely. "Come over for a talk." Wang Yang spoke faintly. He also turned his head over when he saw Lin Dong's eyes looking at his direction. Lin Dong hesitated for a moment after hearing this before he finally nodded. His body moved and he blotted over before sitting down beside Wang Yang. Seated beside Wang Yang, Lin Dong glanced at the stubble and injury-filled face of the former. He was likely quite handsome in the past. However, he seemed exceptionally old and bitter now. "I heard that your group killed a Yuan Gate elder and 2 soul generals." Wang Yang turned his head and looked at Lin Dong. At this moment, his originally soulless eyes had an extremely heated emotion flowing within them. Lin Dong was momentarily startled. Other than Ying Xuanzi, he never told anyone else about what happened. How did Wang Yang know about it? "Huan Huan told me. She seems to worry that I will hate you because of the incident during the whole competition. Therefore, she secretly came over and told me," Wang Yang explained. Lin Dong was speechless. Immediately, he smiled and shook his head. That lass had never appeared in front of him ever since she returned to Dao Sect. It was rumored that she was forcefully dragged by her elder sister to undertake a retreat and train. Unexpectedly, she would actually tell Wang Yang about this. However, her good intentions still caused Lin Dong to be a little touched. She has underestimated senior Wang Yang's magnanimity. Lin Dong laughed. "She understands me very well. The reason she did this is likely because she was concerned." Wang Yang replied in a faint voice. Lin Dong was stunned, but he had no idea how he should reply to this. Hence, he could only remain silent. The matter this time around is truly a joyous one. I have muddled outside for so many years, but the Yuan Gate disciples that I killed were hardly significant. Compared to the Elder and 2 Soul Generals that you guys finished off, it is hardly worth mentioning. Wang Yang parted his mouth and laughed. His eyes appeared to be scarlet. That is only because there was a friend who was tagging along. At my current strength, I am still unable to kill an expert at the advanced mysterious life stage. Lin Dong shook his head and said. Wang Yang nodded. He mused for a moment before speaking. With your current strength, you can be considered outstanding even amongst the Super Sect younger generation members in Eastern Xian region. However, there is still a gap when compared to the top disciples in Yuan Gate. Senior Wang Yang is referring to the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and asked softly. Little Yuan King, Little Ling King, Little Lei King. The 3 of them are personally taught by the 3 chiefs in Yuan Gate, and they are the strongest younger generation members in Yuan Gate. From a certain point of view, they can be considered as the strongest younger generation members in the entire Eastern Xian region. They will likely be our greatest threat in the upcoming Great Sect competition. A dark and stern obscure color flashed across Wang Yang's eyes as he slowly said. Just how strong are these 3 little kings? Lin Dong curled his mouth and asked. The 3 of them had once exchanged blows with mysterious life stage experts. Although they were not victorious, they were able to withdraw without being hurt, Wang Yang replied faintly. Lin Dong's pupils hardened. Even the current him could only retreat when facing an expert at the mysterious life stage. This was because the 2 of them were at completely different levels, and it would be very difficult for him to force himself to exchange blows with such an expert. Those 3 little kings were actually able to achieve this. It seems like they were indeed worthy of being personal disciples of the 3 sect chiefs in Yuan Gate. I have once exchanged blows with Little Lei King, Lei Qian. Wang Yang lowered his eyes and said. Oh? What happened in the end? Lin Dong lifted his brows and asked. Wang Yang was silent for a moment before he promptly unbuttoned his shirt. Promptly, Lin Dong saw that there was a glaring palm imprint injury on Wang Yang's chest. There were numerous slight scars at the edge of the palm imprint that appeared to have been burnt by flames. Although the scar of this palm imprint had diminished greatly, Lin Dong was still able to deduce just how serious of an injury Wang Yang had suffered at that time. That palm was likely sufficient to kill him. A punch in exchange for a palm. However, after this palm, I ended up seriously wounded while he was still able to fight. If it is not because I was quick to escape, I might have died in his hand, Wang Yang mocked himself. Lin Dong's eyes were somewhat solemn. He had exchanged blows with Wang Yang and was clearly aware of just how powerful the latter was. Yet, that little Lei King, Lei Qian could defeat Wang Yang. His strength has likely reached the peak of 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. It was even possible that his body had begun to form some life chi, and he has touched the entrance to the mysterious life stage. Amongst the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate, Lei Qian is merely ranked 3rd. Above him, there are still Little Ling King and Little Yuan King. Wang Yang's expression was gloomy as he slowly explained. Even he is merely ranked 3rd. Lin Dong curled his mouth. The seriousness in his eyes became increasingly dense. The Dao Sect had typically been suppressed by Yuan Gate. Just in terms of the quality of the disciples alone, the latter far surpassed the former. This time around, even if you are included, there are only 3 Dao Sect disciples who can rival a 9 Yuan Nirvana stage expert. Even if we exclude the 3 little kings and exclude the 2 soul generals whom you killed, there are at least 6 individuals who are at 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. Lin Dong laughed bitterly. Not only were they inferior in terms of quality, but there was also such a big gap in terms of quantity. It seems like the upcoming Great Sect competition does not spell well for our Dao Sect. Lin Dong sighed. He subsequently asked, besides the 3 little kings in Yuan Gate, are there any troublesome individuals from the other 6 super sects? The other 6 great super sects are no pushovers as well. The strength of their disciples will not be inferior to our Dao Sect. However, the most outstanding person amongst them should likely be Ling Qingshu from 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace. Ling Qingshu. The hand under Lin Dong's sleeve was basically clenched almost instantly. His straight body also suddenly stiffened for a moment. He was clearly unable to remain calm and indifferent when he heard her name. Wang Yang glanced at Lin Dong in a strange manner. Clearly, he had sensed the change in the latter's body. However, he did not probe. All he did was said, Ling Qingshu's reputation amongst the younger generation in Eastern Xian region is not inferior to any of the three little kings in Yuan Gate. She is also an extremely rare genius, and she has already been selected by the Palace Chief of Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace to be her final disciple. Back then, Xiao Xiao once exchanged blows with Ling Qingshu. However, she was defeated by the latter. However, the relationship between our Dao Sect and the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace is quite decent. Unless some great accident occur, they will likely not attack us. Of course, if we can join forces with them, it will be good news for us. Ling Qingshu is extremely powerful. At the very least, that little Lei King, Lei Qian, will be no match for her. Wang Yang appeared to mock himself when he spoke of this point. Although both parties were not considered enemies, Ling Qingshu would clearly not intervene in the grudge between Dao Sect and Yuan Gate. At the very most, she will just stand by idly. Not helping either party was already the best she could do. So powerful her. Lin Dong muttered to himself. Some heat gradually surged out from deep within his lowered eyes. The other super sects also have some renowned and powerful young experts. The upcoming Great Sect competition will be quite interesting. I only wonder how our Dao Sect would fare, Wang Yang slowly said. Lin Dong grinned and nodded. After which, he raised his head. At this moment, storm clouds drifted over from the horizon before they finally covered the entire sky. I really look forward to it. The sky became a little darker. However, Wang Yang could hear the soft laughter that was being transmitted over from beside his ear. He tilted his head slightly before seeing the young man beside him lifting the corner of his mouth into an arc. Hot and sharp. On top of that, there seemed to be a little anticipation. Ling Qingshu, do you still remember that tender youth from Great Yang Empire? At this moment, the enormous square on the top of towering mountain in the middle of Dao Sect had countless number of Dao Sect's disciples quietly standing on it. Their eyes contained traces of respect and envy as they looked at the center of the square. A few hundred disciples were standing orderly at that spot. Waves after waves of mighty Yuan power fluctuation spread out from their bodies like floodwaters before engulfing the entire square. Every one of them had at least reached 6 Yuan Nirvana stage, and they were the most outstanding disciples from the 4 halls. At the same time, they would also represent the Dao Sect in the upcoming Great Sect competition. This qualification proved that they are the best amongst the current disciples in Dao Sect. A couple of figures were standing straight in front of these disciples. Lin Dong was also one of them. Behind him were Jian Hao, Pang Tong, and other senior direct disciples from Desolate Hall. The eyes of these people were filled with a respect that could not be concealed when they looked at the skinny figure in front of them. After the fight during the hall competition, Lin Dong's reputation within Dao Sect had undoubtedly reached its peak. Not only did the disciples from Desolate Hall obey his every command, but even some of the senior direct disciples from the other 3 halls also felt heartfelt admiration towards him. The Great Sect competition was about to begin soon. Naturally, Dao Sect had also begun to consolidate their members as they prepared to head to the unique Devil region in a large group. Lin Dong stood at the leader's spot amongst the group. His eyes were scanning his surroundings in a bored manner. After which, he saw Ying Huan Huan, who was at the front of the Sky Hall's group a short distance away. The young lady had clearly also noticed Lin Dong's wandering eyes. Immediately, a lively, clear, charming smile surfaced on her pretty face. Her enchanting manner caused quite a number of disciples around to throw envious gazes towards Lin Dong. Although it was easy for Ying Huan Huan to become close with other disciples, anyone with sharp eyes was able to tell the slightly different attitude the young lady had when dealing with Lin Dong. Lin Dong also smiled at Ying Huan Huan. He was just about to speak when a rushing wind sound appeared on the tall stage in front of them. After which, a couple of figures landed on it. The one in front was the master of Dao Sect, Ying Xuanzi. Behind him were the hall chiefs and deputy hall chiefs of the 4 halls. The private conversations on the square immediately came to a halt when Ying Huan Huan appeared. Everyone's eyes contained rich respect when they paused on the white-clothed and elegant Ying Huan Huan. Ying Huan Huan stood on the tall stage. His eyes overlooked the young disciples with fiery hot eyes below. Immediately, his warm spring breeze-like voice resounded beside the ears of everyone on the square. As a Dao Sect disciple, it is likely that everyone should be familiar with the danger and cruelty of the great sect competition. This time around, it is not a friendly spar. The only ones whom you can trust are your fellow martial brothers. There is not much that I wish to say. All I hope is that the number of people who leave will be the same as the number of disciples who return. That is the best I hope for. Ying Huan's voice had an additional solemnness. His expression was complicated as he watched those excited young disciples. He was aware that these disciples' faces would definitely gain an additional callousness once they returned. However, the companions beside them might be the price for them to learn that cold sternness. One must ultimately pay a price to grow up. During this great sect competition, Xiao Xiao will be the commander. Lin Dong and Wang Yang will be assisting her. I hope that the 3 of you will be able to bring every single one of them back. Ying Huan Huan deeply roared. His eyes were stern as he stared at the 3 people in front of the group. Understood. Ying Xiaoxiao's pretty face turned solemn as she replied in a deep voice. Standing beside her, Lin Dong and Wang Yang looked at each other before they gently nodded. This was not going to be an easy task. This time around, the hall chiefs from the 4 halls will accompany all of you to the unique devil region. However, upon entering the unique devil region, you will be on your own. Are all of you prepared? The eyes of those disciples on the square were determined and wildly hot. None of them had any intention of withdrawing. A smile surfaced on Ying Huan's face when he saw this scene. After which, he spoke in a soft and slow voice, if everyone is prepared, all of you should go. The entire Dao Sect will be waiting for all of you here to return in triumph. Everyone on the square had an excited expression involuntarily surfacing on their young faces once Ying Huan's words sounded out. The Hall Chief of Sky Hall, Ji Lei, also stepped forward at this moment. After which, he waved his large hand. The other 3 Hall Chiefs also rushed into midair. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Those Dao Sect's disciples on the square also hurriedly rushed into midair upon seeing this. Their formation was quite orderly. After which, all of them lowered their heads and cupped their hands together while they looked at the people littered over the mountains. Roar! The densely packed Dao Sect's disciples on the surrounding mountains also cupped their hands together towards the sky. Soon after, a wave-like low roar resounded over the place. Seniors, bring glory to our Dao Sect. The low roar rumbled and spread, causing the sky to shake a little. At the same time, it also caused the fresh blood within one's body to boil abruptly. Lin Dong exhaled a deep breath of air. This scene in front of him caused even him to involuntarily feel impulsive, as though hot blood had rushed into his head. Go? Ji Lei took one look around him. After which, he waved his hand and a low and deep sound appeared. After his voice sounded, he immediately flashed and rushed out. Swoosh! When his body moved, hundreds of figures behind him also rushed out almost instantly. In an instant, hurried wind-splitting sound resounded in an ear-piercing manner. Finally, a large group of people were just like a cluster of storm clouds as they swiftly left Dao Sect like wind sweeping the clouds. Standing on the tall stage, when Ying Huan Huan saw that large group of figures rapidly leaving, the hand under his sleeve involuntarily tightened slowly. Their Dao Sect had suffered great losses during the previous great sect competitions. He wondered what the result would be this time around. This time around, a total of 300 people from our Dao Sect is participating in the great sect competition. They can be considered to be the most outstanding disciples selected from the 4 halls. This lineup is quite significant. In midair, Lin Dong flew at the front of the disciples from Desolate Hall. Right now, Pang Tong was beside him and he was softly telling him about the number of Dao Sect's disciples participating this time around. Do you know approximately how many disciples Yuan Gate would send? Lin Dong softly asked. It should be around 500 or so. Pang Tong thought for a moment and said. Lin Dong nodded slightly. Their lineup was quite significant. Moreover, the participants were considered as the elites amongst their disciples. From this point, one could tell that the strength of Yuan Gate was indeed slightly stronger than Dao Sect. We will hurry to the unique Devil City now. That is the place where all the various super sects will gather. It is likely that the groups from the other super sects have already begun their journey. Soon, we will be able to meet them at the unique Devil City. Of course, the 8 great super sects are not the only ones who will participate in the great sect competition. Some of the other powerful factions in Eastern Xian region will also send their disciples to participate. This could be considered as the top exchange amongst the younger generation members. Only those reputable young experts in Eastern Xian region will participate. That situation can only be described as chaotic. Lin Dong nodded slightly after he heard Pang Tong's words. That unique devil region was already a dangerous place. In addition, there were currently so many people with unknown intentions participating in it. One simply could not imagine how chaotic things would be should the situation spin out of control. Since the other sects are hurrying over, it is likely that the 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace will also appear. Lin Dong's eyes looked into the distant. A proud figure surfaced once again within his mind. When he met her at the 100 Empire Mountain and realized the enormous gap between them, Lin Dong chose to conceal his identity. He once said that he would have the qualifications for her to take him seriously the next time he appeared in front of her. Now, he already possessed the qualification. He could be considered as one of the elite younger generation members in Eastern Xian region, and he was not afraid of facing any one of them, even in a life and death battle. This naturally included the so-called 3 little kings in Yuan Gate. Ling Qingzhu, it has been 5 years, let us meet directly this time around. The fist under Lin Dong's sleeve slowly tightened. After which, he lifted his head and looked into the distance. The arc on the corner of his mouth became increasingly dense. This time around, it would be a gathering of the elites. This video